Hey guys, so this video is all about how the other day I woke up with back pain for the first time in my life, lower back pain. Never had it before, minus 14-hour car ride down to South Carolina, and what I did about it, and maybe what you should do about it, and what you should probably not do about it is the first thing that I did, which was freak out. So it's like 2 in the morning, and I wake up and I think, maybe I'm waking up because I have to go to the bathroom. And then I kind of like look down with my brain at my back and I go, oh, that really hurts. And so in my low back, I was feeling this like tight, deep, awful ache. It was a little sharp. Never felt this type of back pain before for more than maybe a couple of seconds. And I got up, went for a walk, went to the washroom, and just didn't go away. And I laid in bed for another half an hour, didn't go away. Another half an hour, didn't go away. And so I immediately start to think what every patient should not think is that there is something really wrong with me. I have cancer in my spine, I'm gonna die. And partially this was having 3 a.m. brain, and this is partially just being slightly a catastrophizer. But after a little more thought, I realized, okay, it's probably not the case. And then what I did was I went and took some pain medication and I fell back asleep, and then the next day it still hurt. And so this is the experience for so many people that we see in the office, for so many people that are going to watch this video. And what I want to do with this video is explain exactly what I did in terms of helping myself. But first, talk a little bit about like mindset and what you should be thinking about so that you do not go down the rabbit hole like I did and catastrophize and think it's something really bad, which I'm very empathetic to and very sympathetic to, especially because I'm a chiropractor. I'm very knowledgeable about back pain. I know that really scary stuff like cancer, infection, inflammatory arthritides, they represent like 1%, maybe 2% of all back pains, and that is probably very, 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 very overestimated. So, most back pain is going to fall into the category of muscle, joint, and irritated small nerves that are telling your brain that there's a painful stimulus or a painful problem. And then the other type of back pain, which is much less, is something related to a disc tissue or like literally an irritated nerve, which is called neuropathic pain. Neuropathic pain is when the nerve is actually injured, sharp, shooting, burning. I didn't have this. So what I did was as follows. Okay guys, so what I did when I woke up was I first off did a couple of diagnostic tests on myself to make sure that there was no irritation in any of the nerves of the spine. You should probably have a massage therapist, a chiropractor, or a physiotherapist do this to you to make sure that there is nothing to be worried about. A couple things that I did was I blew into a closed hand. It's called the Valsalva maneuver. If there's a problem inside your spine, it's probably going to hurt. The other thing I did was I laid on my spine, see how far I could lift my leg up, testing the sciatic nerve. I could get pretty high. Okay, probably not a sciatic nerve issue. I didn't have any impact, so when I dropped on my heels, I wasn't expecting to have sharp, excruciating pain because I compressed a vertebral body. I had regular old back pain. So when you have that tight band across the back, when I had that tight band across the back, what I typically will tell patients to do is to not attack the dragon. Don't go at the painful spot. You work your way around it to the tissues that go there or attach there. So the example that I like to think about is if you have a clothesline and you think about your house as where the painful problem is, I want to take clothes and towels off of the sagging clothesline to take some tension off of the clothesline. So you're looking at your lat muscles, your mid-back, and of course the glutes. And so, especially the glutes. And so another thing I'll talk about in a second is for me, I also want to figure out what happened here, what caused this so that it doesn't come back, which I will get to in a second, but this is what I know you guys are interested in. So what I did, a couple of easy stretches. First thing, just to take some stress off of the spine, rolled back and forth a little bit. Now I will happily share some Instagram posts that go over some of these things in more detail, where you can look this up individually. I also had the legs move side to side, very gentle, not trying to provoke any pain, trying to get a good stretch. If I found a good stretch, take a big breath in, let it fall. So after I'm warmed up a little bit, this is when I started, doing a little more like what a chiropractic correction would look like. Bringing the legs over, reaching up and back, feeling a good stretch here in the spine. And then of course doing that on the other side. So I've loosened up the low back a little bit, I've loosened up the hips. Now we're getting into kind of the meat and potatoes, and I wanted to stretch out the glute muscle. So for the gluteus maximus, bring the leg up to the chest, felt a really deep stretch in the glutes, didn't quite bring on the back pain, but it was close, and I thought, okay, this is part of the problem. Held it here until the stretch released, and then brought it across the shoulder, and then I felt an even worse stretch, which gave me some more information about maybe what was causing it. Opposite shoulder until it went away. And then I did the same thing on the other side, and by went away I mean the pain, I mean the stretch, same thing, and then a couple minutes in this position until that tension in the glutes released. So I did some poking and prodding in the glutes, realized I was still having some discomfort, so I got out my trusty foam roller and I rolled the snot out of my glutes. So I started on the side through the gluteus medius minimus in my nice George Costanza pose. Spent a couple minutes actually just lying on the muscle. Nice easy deep breaths. I even tortured myself a little bit, brought all my weight onto that glute. Nice trigger point actually traveling up into the back and down the spine. Sorry, down the leg. So I know that's a spot I need to hit. Oof, still bugging me. And then I rolled along just below the belt line, just at the bottom of the iliac crest, on the top part of that gluteus maximus. You'll see on the diagram there. And then rolled it out a little bit, rolled back and forth, basically just scanning those muscles and those tissues for any quote-unquote trigger points or really tender points until a few minutes on top of them goes away. My back discomfort was on both sides, so I targeted both sides, but I'm just going to show the one to you guys here today. So I've gone through the glutes with the foam roller, and then the next thing I would want to do especially is check the hamstrings. So for me, I don't typically have a lot of tension in my hamstrings. Most patients are going to, so I would spend some time, probably not in this position because it might bug your back. I would do some hamstring stretches. So I would do a ground sweep. So our ground sweep, heel down, toe up, and we're gonna hinge at the hip, like we're trying to sit back in a chair, but you have to keep the legs straight. So I would do a few of these, and in fact I did a few of these on both sides. Didn't feel too much in the hamstrings. If you do, you might need to do a little bit more. This motion you might get a little more out of if you pretend like you're gonna sweep the ground. But the key here is to keep the legs straight and hinge at the hips, not the low back. So low back, hips. So I did a few ground sweeps on both sides, and then I stretched out the glutes on the side of the hips, out to the side, leg comes over, and just made a big C through here. So why I went to this stretch next and last before we went to the next part is I wanted to start targeting some of the outside muscles in the spine, so the quadratus lumborum here on the side of the back. When I dug my finger onto the side here, it was definitely an irritated spot, so I wanted to get at it. And a couple of nice easy breaths. Really, really important to make sure your nervous system's calm, make sure your breathing's good so you're not increasing your stress level or making things any worse. And it's gonna help you get the deepest stretched. So you could spend 30, 40, 60 seconds per side doing that. You'll see from this angle, hip to the side, and I'm trying to pretend like I'm staying between two buildings in a really narrow alleyway, and the only way to go is out to the side. I can't go forward, and I can't really go back. Now, if you notice that this stretch is really deep and really good, but if you try moving the hip around, you can scour or look around for some other tight spots here on the side of the hip. You can also grab the other hand and deepen that stretch, and you might really feel it through the low back. So for me, I know that this has gotten quite a bit better, because when I first did that stretch, it really bothered my back, or I felt the stretch. Didn't make it worse, it wasn't painful, it's just like, ooh, that's the spot. And now when I do it, less so. So we've gone through, targeted the glutes, we've targeted the spine, we haven't targeted the spine yet, we've worked around it through that QL. What I did next was I worked through the mid-back and through the lats before I even started approaching the low back and trying to get it to move. So what I did next was I foam roll the middle of my spine. Just above where the pain was at the base of the shoulder blades. I worked on over top of the shoulder blades, just bending back nice and easy. Working through some of the tissues, a little left, a little right. I'll post some other videos to show you guys how to properly foam roll. And then what I think helped the most in my case was I put the foam roller here at the base of the rib cage, not quite in the low back, but right where it was starting to bug me. And then I hung out in this position for a few minutes. Most of my weight is on my butt, some is on the foam roller. Nice and easy breaths, really getting into the targeted tissues, really where I was getting that pain and discomfort. And then I just rolled a little bit back and forth. Now in this spot, I can still feel it. I can still feel the tissues a bit irritated. I'm just rolling back and forth, nice and easy. And then what I did was when it started to feel a little more comfortable, I lifted my butt upwards and just rolled a little bit. Now, that was a little too intense. So what I did was I put my butt down and I just tried to roll with my butt on the floor. When your butt's on the floor, it's going to take weight off of the foam roller. So right in there, nice and easy. Nice deep breaths, a little to the right, a little to the left. Worked bending backwards a little bit, and I probably spent about 4 or 5 minutes in this position until I was able to either get up on my hands and control how much pressure I put on the foam roller, or literally put all of my weight or most of my weight on it, a little bit bending backwards, and even this is still a little too much. I didn't spend too much time in this position. So that was kind of as aggressive as I got. I didn't go right into the low back where it was really bugging me, but it was feeling a little bit better at this point. So what I did was I went in and did some of our cat camels. And with our cat camels, we want to make sure the head drops. We're pushing up strong through the hands, pushing into the ground. And then last but not least, tuck in our tail, or really try to arch the spine as much as possible. One big breath in. And then we go into our cow or our camel. You can move a little side to side, but I spent a few good minutes really working the low back, modifying the cat camel just with the tail tuck. I did this for a few minutes until things started to feel like they were releasing a little bit. With this, you can get creative. The cat camel is super safe, very hard to hurt yourself. The keys, let the head fall. Nice easy breaths, push up through the forearms, and then work on tucking that tail, especially if you want to target the low back muscles. If you can imagine your tail, you're tucking, or like you're squeezing your butt cheeks together. Okay. And then last but not least, what I did was I stretched out the lat muscles, and I will show you guys how to do that next. Okay. So to stretch out the lat muscles, which attach into the spine through the thoracolumbar fascia, they can often create this rounding or tense feeling that might propagate or make your back pain worse. What I think is one of the best and easiest and one of the best feeling stretches you can do at home is find and grab a door handle, sit your buttock backwards, and what you're going to do is you're going to try to lean back as much as you can. I'm leaning away from the handle, dropping my hip, and you should feel a nice big stretch here through that swimmer's muscle on the side. You can play around with your position. You can drop your buttock even a little bit lower. You could try to make an even bigger C here, and you're going to feel different part of that lat muscle stretching. It might be a little tough to visualize in this position, but what you really want to think about, leaning backwards, getting a big C shape through this swimmer's muscle here on the side. Another way that you can do this, we've shown before, is a prayer type stretch. Prayer stretch. So guys, that's what I did when I had my low back pain episode this week. It took a day or two for it to get better. I think probably you would expect the natural history or what it would take by itself to be about the same or upwards of a week or two, depending on what you do to help yourself. I think a couple of important things that we haven't discussed yet is A, making sure that there is not an underlying problem that needs to be addressed. B, trying to figure out what the underlying cause was that brought it on, or what sort of factors brought it on. And then I guess C, which I'll address now, is if you don't have all the time that I had, if you only want to do one or two things, what I would probably do is stretch the glutes, knee to chest, opposite shoulder, cat camel. If that's all you have and all you want to do, those are probably the two things that I would go to first. But with my approach, I'm always going to shoot for the gold standard. I'm always going to do as much as possible to help things out. So there's that. So in my case, I was able to figure out that what my back pain from was changing a position on my bike seat. And by changing a position, I mean my bike seat had slowly slidden back over a couple weeks, like 3 or 4 centimeters. And I hadn't noticed it until I was checking my fit the next day. So what happened in that case was just a little more hunched over, more tension in the glutes, and I think a large part of the back pain was from tension in the glutes and the low back muscles referring upwards or creating some excess tension or compensation through the lumbar spine musculature. That's what I think it was. When I went and saw my chiropractor, he said there wasn't anything particularly wrong with the joints of the spine. It was largely muscular. And so in that case, I'm not too worried about moving forward that I've developed some sort of new issue or problem because A, think I figured out what the source was, and B, I had a professional look and they couldn't see anything that was really wrong or something to worry about. In your case, after you've dealt with the discomfort, I would do that. I would make sure that there's not some sort of underlying problem with your spine, some sort of muscle weakness that stems from a problem in the spine. I would get a really, really good assessment, especially if the pain doesn't go away. You might be surprised to hear that my first port of call would not have been my chiropractor's office. It actually would have probably been to a massage therapist. And the reason for that is I find that when people have acute low back pain or acute stiffness, I am actually not as successful as some of my colleagues at the office who are massage therapists at dealing with it. They just can spend a little bit more time with you. They can work on all of the tight muscles that are guarding or compensating. And in my experience, in my practice, I would definitely send one of my patients to a massage therapist first. That being said, I would definitely want to check them out after some of the acuteness has gone away so that I can assess the underlying spine and make sure that nothing shifted, irritated, and there's no underlying core problem that might explain some of that stiffness, pain, and other collateral damage. So a final few thoughts for today's video. We've given you a blueprint for what you can do at home to try to help yourself, how you should think about it in terms of approaching with treatment and assessment afterwards to try to understand what the root problem is. And then also we've highlighted that you should probably try not to freak out when it first happens. Go with the percentages and know that most back pain is going to get better by itself. The pain will go away. But the asterisk with that is I would always recommend you try to figure out what the underlying problem was that brought on the back pain. Don't look for cancer. Don't look for something like scary like an infection. Odds are if you hear hooves, it's a horse and it's not a zebra. So don't do what I did. Don't freak out. You probably don't have cancer. Make sure that you get a proper assessment though if you are worried. If this keeps happening and if, unlike me, you can't figure out what the cause was, you definitely want to get checked out. So guys, I hope that was helpful. I hope that this video is more preventative than actually reactive and you're not suffering from a low back pain episode. If you are, let me know how it works. I'd love to hear. And if you need some help finding what the root problem is, that's what we do in our office, especially, well, only if you're in the Toronto area. Guys, be well, be safe, take care, and we'll see you soon.